A very good evening to you. And welcome along to another Sweet and Swing here on Mike's Radio. H in the chair until the top of the hour with some of the best sounds from your wireless. What have we got? Bit of Oscar Peterson, piano moods. Peter Dawson, marvellous voice on the swing side of things. More from that great Petula Clark album, Sam Wooding and his orchestra. But to start off, we'll stereo with Eric Winston and something perhaps you might be having this weekend. A bottle party. Two Erics for the price of one to get us going. Because, of course, Slow Train Blues, our theme tune of many a year, long before I took over the reins of Sweet and Swing. And the old maestro was still presenting it, and that was his choice of Slow Train Blues by Eric Winston as the theme for this programme. And we followed that up with another of Eric's numbers, Bottle Party. And as I say, if you're going to have a bottle party, a Friday or Saturday night is probably quite a good day to do it. Or perhaps don't do it at all, just have a nice cup of cocoa. Up to you. I'm not going to lecture you one way or another. I'm sure you're more than old enough yourselves to make your mind up what's good for you and what's not. Anyway, I hope we're all surviving now that we're into autumn officially. Not that I think many people, if you're living on the Isle of Man in particular, will have noticed the difference that much. If you're listening in far-flung climes, of course, it could be a different kettle of fish. If you're in Singapore or Asia or, I don't know, China or something, it could be much nicer. It could have been blistering 40 degrees for the last 12 weeks or more. And an interesting range, actually, now that in the wonderful digital world in which we live, where, of course, you could be listening to the podcast as much as this live broadcast, then, well, you could be listening anywhere. And indeed, people do. I see we still have listeners in the States. We still have listeners in the Philippines, in Austria, in Canada, and in the UK, of course. And I think one or two in France, and still one or two in New Zealand, which is very nice to hear. Quite a few in America. And if you're listening in America, you're very, very welcome. Lovely to have you along. And why not drop us a line? If you live in any of those places, or even none of those places, somewhere else entirely, get in touch and let us know how you're listening, what you like, what you'd like to hear. Howard Caine at manxradio.com. Caine with an E, C-A-I-N-E. It would be lovely to hear from you. So if you are stateside or wherever, quite a few in the States listening on the podcast, get in touch and see if we can't do something for you. Why not? Lovely to have you along in any case. Eric Winston, larger-than-life sort of character. Led his first band as a 20-year-old at London's Spanish Club. Don't think he spoke Spanish as far as I'm aware. And very good on accordion. That was his first instrument, really. He was a very accomplished accordion player and then got this much bigger sounding band after the war and became a great favourite at, wait for it, Butlins holiday camp. And between 1946 and 1969, he appeared in pretty much every Butlins holiday camp going. Never been to a Butlins, but they were very popular. But I think they're still going, aren't they? One of his favourites, the one he appeared at more than most, it would appear, would be Bognor Regis, another place I've never been. But he had a lovely, lively guy, had a very genial manner, which certainly would help, I think, in those sort of settings, I guess. And during the winter, he enjoyed engagements at various ballrooms and theatres and had great hit tunes. Stagecoach, of course, that was one of his. Slow Train Blues, very much alike. I don't know if it was a hit for him. It's a great number in any case. And Oasis, which he wrote apparently in an underground shelter during the London Blitz. Well, I suppose that would help to keep your mind off the terrors above, would it not? On with the music. As I say, some Petula Clark coming up. Lovely collection from our friends at Avid they supplied. And a great voice. You forget what a good voice she had. And speaking of good voices, Peter Dawson at the other end of the spectrum, perhaps. But my word, he had a great voice as well. You're having a little bit on the sweet side of Peter Dawson, a favourite of my grandfather's, I believe, although I never met my grandfather, sadly, so I have it on good authority from the old maestro who was a big Peter Dawson fan, and I think they might have met. I don't know. I'll leave that thought with you in any case. And we were in the garden the other day, and I say we, that's not the royal we, it's the Memsahib and myself, and once she gets going, she loves hacking back things with sort of more enthusiasm necessary than acute skill. Nonetheless, a good, hard-working session was had by one and all in the garden, including cutting back some of the wonderful honeysuckle, which had pretty much finished flowering for this year, and needed coming back a bit because it was beginning to strangle a lot of other things. And we look forward to it appearing again next year. Honeysuckle makes me think of Honeysuckle Rose, of course.
When they see you out with me, I don't blame them, goodness knows. honeysuckle rose. When you're passing by, flowers droop and sigh, and I know the reason why. You're much sweeter, goodness knows, honeysuckle rose. Don't buy sugar, you just have to touch my cup. You're my sugar, it's sweet when you stir it up. When I'm taking sips from your tasty lips, seems the honey fairly drips. Your confection, goodness knows, honeysuckle rose.
from the very cheapest seat. But like two little flies on a lump of sugar, we'll find it all so sweet. When we share a maple sundae, we consider it a treat. And like two little flies on a lump of sugar, we'll find it all so sweet. Maybe tomorrow morning I'll open up my eyes to find our dreams have all come true. But till tomorrow morning I'm gonna be employed making love to lovely little you. Life is ever milk and honey in the moonlight when we meet. But like two little flies on a lump of sugar, we'll find it all so sweet.
There we go. We started off with two Erics, and then we've had two Jacks. First off, Jack Simpson with the sextet, followed by Jack Jackson and the boys and girls in the film of Alberta Hunter, with a song you'd have thought if you'd come up with it, it wouldn't make much of a song title, would you? Two Little Flies on a Lump of Sugar. I mean, it's not selling it to many people, realistically, is it? It sounds like a Greasy Spoon cafe. But, yeah, in the right hands and with the right lyricist, not at all bad, is it? Rather fun. Maybe vaguely sort of novelty number, but I think it passes muster as a good sort of swing tune as well. And deftly handled there by Jack Jackson and the boys, and great vocals from Alberta Hunter. And before that, Honeysuckle Rose. Yeah, I was thinking that, cutting back the honeysuckle the other day, I was humming it to myself whenever I think of honeysuckle. I invariably think of Honeysuckle Rose. Great track, can't go wrong with it. And Jack Simpson and his sextet with Betty Kent on the vocals in that particular case. Betty Kent, of course, as has been remarked before, second cousin to George Chisholm. Yeah, because she was born Elizabeth Scott Chisholm and then later married the band leader Teddy Foster and quickly became his singer, and later performed with Jack Payne along with Lou Prager and Edward Jackson and Jack Simpson. Also appeared in the 1938 Royal Command performance. If you cast your mind back, well, you might have been there. Who knows? And then after the war, gave up all of the glamour and the glitz and the lights and the fame, and presumably the money as well, I don't know, to devote herself solely to their adopted daughter. But then sadly Betty herself had poor health, and I have a horrible suspicion she ended up taking her own life. It seems tragic after listening to a lovely voice there and sort of such freshness and optimism. Oh, I don't know. That's life sometimes, isn't it? Peter Dawson, Somewhere a Voice is Calling. And what a voice there was to call. And as I mentioned a little earlier, I do seem to recall, whilst sadly I never met either of my grandfathers, one of my great regrets in life, blessed with a wonderful family, wonderful parents, and a wonderful nana, and gran, who I knew briefly, although she died, I was very young still. But my grandfathers, sadly, one was gone before I was even around here, still stored in separate places, as we'd say. And the other one died when I was so young, I never got to know him. And I know Dad's dad, when he was a little boy, so the old maestro's father, took the old maestro, Jim, at a young age, young enough that he doesn't remember, or he didn't remember that much about it, to see a singer, I think over here on the Isle of Man, if memory serves correct. I'll have to look that up, or check with Morris Powell. I think it was the Isle of Man. Could have been Manchester, but I think the Isle of Man. And afterwards went back and held up young Jim to shake the hand of this gentleman, and then was told afterwards, "You've shaken the hand of the great Peter Dawson."
When the black clouds turn to grey and the grey is streaked with light, I jump from bed and open my window wide. I can only start my day when I know that I'm in right. What do I look for? What do I find outside? Every morning from my windowsill I can see him over the hill. There he goes, the man who brings the sunshine. Where does he come from? Where does he go? What does he look like? How should I know? There he goes, the man who brings the sunshine. If I don't see him, that means that there'll be clouds and showers and shadows all day long for me. So do you wonder when I wake to find his shadow dancing on my blind? I love the man who brings the sunshine to me. But there sometimes comes a dawn when the sunshine never shows. I peer and search, but there's no one there to see. There are dewdrops on the lawn, and the faintest whisper blows. Something that's saying somebody's playing with me. Every morning from my windowsill I can see him over the hill. There he goes, the man who brings the sunshine. Where does he come from? Where does he go? What does he look like? How should I know? There he goes, the man who brings the sunshine. If I don't see him, that means that there'll be clouds and showers and shadows all day long for me. So do you wonder when I wake to find his shadow dancing on my blind? I love the man who brings the sunshine to me.
Well, I wish he'd brought it this year, is all I can say, Peter. Been in rather short supply. Wherever he was, he didn't come to the Isle of Man very regularly. Peter Dawson, the wonderful bass baritone from, well, he died actually, 1961, year before I was born, as it went. So, yeah, I wouldn't have got to see him, would I? And born over in Adelaide, in Australia. I've been to Adelaide on the 31st of January 1882 and had a pretty comfortable upbringing in a very middle-class home. His dad was an industrialist, and so, yeah, they weren't short of the odd fenniger. So I think his dad probably wanted him to follow suit, but he ignored parental opposition and scepticism, it seems, and journeyed to England, determined to make his name as a singer. Well, he proved the naysayers wrong, didn't he? He made a very good career as a singer. Possibly because he was fortunate enough to find a teacher of very high standing early doors in Sir Charles Santley, who certainly recognised and helped to consolidate his basic talent for singing and encouraged his talents onto greater things. And, well, his singing had qualities which appealed to everyone, I think, whether they were, as it says, poet or peasant, enlightened and the unsophisticated, direct, robust heartiness, and lots of sensitivity, which still shines through his legacy of recordings today. I'm not going to disagree with that. Instantly identifiable, I would say again. And a great picture on the front of this Living Era CD. Somewhere a voice is calling Peter Dawson. Resplendent in a 1940s, I would say, style suit. Wing collar, tie, wonderful hat with a broad band, like a sort of Homburg style, I guess, but a slightly shallower rim. I don't know the style of hat, but I want one, is all I can say. Great looking hat. Smiling sort of and looking sideways at the camera, but you wouldn't see so often these days, apart from the crazy world of rock and roll. Smoking a fag. Don't take up smoking, children. It's not good for you. And it's definitely not good for you. Well, it's not good for you full stop, but I mean, I think as a singer, you wouldn't get too many people now. Certainly in the classical world, in any case. Maybe, like I said, in the crazy world of rock and roll and punk and whatever, they'll take whatever's going. But yeah, you wouldn't see too many opera singers, I think, happily enjoying a fag at the end of an opera. But there he is, fag in hand, and yes, looks like a huge amount of ash just about to drop off the end of it. Love it. Love it. 'Tis Sweet and Swing. H with you through until the top of the hour. And Oscar Peterson, I promised you, and this was sort of jogged my memory the other day. John Moss, my colleague here, has been unearthing some little nuggets from the extensive archives here at Max Radio. Extensive, but not always necessarily fully organised, although work is in progress. I'll leave it there. A lot of good work going on. But John, a master at finding some wonderful bits and pieces he's been playing to celebrate the 60 years of Max Radio. And the other day, he played the old maestro, not playing the piano or doing this programme or something else, but a clip from an interview he did with Oscar Peterson about 35 or more years ago, I think. I know he was delighted with it. It was at the Edinburgh Jazz Festival, and he managed to corner Oscar. I think he might have arranged it in advance, and did quite a, 10, 15, 20-minute interview, I think, with him while he was up there. And he always says it was one of the highlights, I think, of doing the show at that time, as he was a great Oscar Peterson fan. So I thought we ought to have a bit of Oscar to celebrate that. Here he is playing in Charlie Kunt style, a medley in other words. First off, I Concentrate on You, and then segueing into Moon River. Go and put the kettle on. hear the creaking of the piano stool there just at the end of the track, and I think you could hear a little bit earlier on. It sounded like he was just maybe moving his weight around on the stool, and it's a little bit creaky in the studio, it has to be said. But there again, he was a big man, Oscar Peterson, it has to be said. I was fortunate enough to see Oscar twice. The second time, sadly, he was, definitely, it was the last time he ever appeared in Britain, I think, at the Royal Albert Hall. And I think both the times I saw him was in the Albert Hall, come to think of it. The first time he was still very much playing very well with Herb Ellis, I think, and Ray Brown. And that would have been in the 1980s, I would have thought, about 40-odd years ago, with the old maestro. And then we saw him again with Brother Chris. The three of us went when I think it had been announced he was playing almost certainly for the last time in Britain, and it was. And by that time he'd had a stroke, and so whilst he'd recovered and lived on for a few years, he never played really the same way again, I don't think. And unfortunately had what felt like maybe early onset dementia of some kind when we saw him the final time, and that he couldn't remember the tracks he'd played, so would call the same track out time and again. And it was all a little bit sad, but happily, whilst the Albert Hall was packed, everyone knew it was their last chance to see him, and had been listening to him and getting so much pleasure from his music for so long that these things could just be ignored, and it was just seen for what it was, a final chance to see a great man, maybe beyond the peak of his powers, but still playing very well. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't bad music. It just, obviously, when you hear him at his peak, it wasn't where it was, and clearly he was suffering a little and lived on for a while. But yes, never toured again and never came back to Britain, but a huge recorded legacy to remember just what a wonderful pianist he was, and I think a genuinely nice bloke. He certainly came across that way. I never met him, but judging by the clip of interview that was played on Mike's Radio the other day, that the old maestro did with Oscar 30 or 40 years ago, he actually was a very nice bloke, quite humble as well. Wonderful, wonderful music. And yes, check out any of those. If you're an Oscar fan, Tracks is one of my recommendations. A solo album of Oscar. Wonderful, wonderful music. Terrific. Onwards and upwards. Where are we going to go from there? Oh, here's a woman who was no great stranger to Manx shores. Ivy Benson and her all-girl band. The all-girl band of Ivy Benson. No stranger, as I say, to Manx shores, although I never, sadly, got to see her myself. And yes, sort of packed up playing the saxophone after her sort of great times during the war years. And a fascinating book. I still haven't got through all of it. I bought a book a while back all about the Ivy Benson band. Fascinating story, and heard some clips on the radio one time. I think it was a lovely Radio 4 programme that was done that was very good indeed about it. There were still, I don't know now, but certainly a year or two back, there were still some members of the band still around. One, the bass player, I think, whose name eludes me, was still playing in her mid to late 80s at home. She would entertain and play with a little band down in her home, I think down on the south coast somewhere in England from time to time. Sounded like a right character. They all were, it has to be said. But sadly, of course, whilst she performed sterling service during the war, was sort of almost dropped by the BBC like a hot potato after the war. Just went back to all the male bands again after they came back from the services. And it was like a case of, right, we don't want you anymore now. Go back to doing the housework. And shocking, really. One likes to think attitudes have changed, but don't know. Maybe we're heading in the right direction. Rita Williams taking the vocals. Rita, well, she never, unlike some, never really set out to become a vocalist. Certainly not as a young girl in any case. It was only at 15 she entered a talent competition in Bournemouth organised by Billy Merrin. She won, and he promptly signed her up. And didn't really look back after that. Sang with Carol Gibbons, Billy Thorburn, Lou Prager, Felix Mendelssohn, Billy Cotton, and of course Ivy Benson. Also cut quite a few sides for the Woolworth brand name, the Embassy label. Not the Fags, as far as I'm aware. I promised you some Petula Clark. We've been enjoying dipping into this one. You just forget what a good voice she had. Five classic albums rather than 4 on 2 CDs from our friends at Avid, who are so good at supplying great music for this and other shows here on Manx Radio. And yes, this one could be maybe an alternate theme tune for Sweet and Swing. Memories are made of this.
Sweet, sweet memories you gave me. You can't beat the memories you gave me.
Take one fresh and tender kiss. Add one stolen night of bliss. One girl, one boy, some grief, some joy. Memories are made of this. Don't forget a small moonbeam, fold in lightly with a dream. Your lips and mine, 2 sips of wine. Memories are made of this. Then add the wedding bells, one house where lovers dwell, 3 little kids for the flavor. Stir carefully through the days, see how the flavor stays. These are the dreams you will savor, with some blessings from above. Serve it generously with love. One man, one wife, one love through life. Memories are made of this. Memories are made of this. Memories are made of this.
girl named Eileen. I kept her serving donuts till all she had were gone. I sat there dunking donuts till she caught on. I must go back to the army routine. And every doughboy knows what that will mean. A soldier boy without a heart has two strikes on him from the start. And my heart's at the stage door canteen.
Petula Clark first there. Yeah, I've been enjoying it, dipping into that one. And very popular one. I used to like them. Even I liked that one back in the day, I think, when I was a wee whippersnapper. Even more than perhaps I do now. I don't know. Memories are made of this from a date with Pet. And Petula Clark, well, a massive star in her day, of course. A household name on radio, made her first broadcast, well, I don't know, certainly before the 1950s, I think, wasn't it? She was outstanding woman personality on TV in 1950, and many times top of the bill in variety, and did films and all sorts, and made records, and, well, did the lot, really, didn't she, back in the day? I think it must have been would it be the 40s she first started singing? I think it must have been, I would have thought. Maybe even earlier, I don't know. But certainly, you think if she was on TV as a personality in 1950, presumably she was on radio several years before that. I'll see if I can find out the exact time she first started recording. Either way, very nice. I enjoyed that one. And then I left my heart at the stage door canteen. Ambrose and his orchestra, with Rex Eaton taking the vocals on that one. And yes, not a name I particularly know. If you're looking for details, there's no better book, at least in my calendar in any case, or my bookshelf. This England's second book of British dance bands, singers and smaller bands, which does list Rex Eaton, and I thought it might have some words of wisdom to impart. And yet, when I turned to the request page, when I got there, the cupboard was slightly bare. Because I'll tell you what it says about Rex Eaton. It says, Rex Eaton, recorded during the war with Ambrose. That's it. That's the lot. That's all it says. If you know more, you might be a massive Rex Eaton fan. You might be Rex Eaton's daughter or son. Who knows? He had a lovely voice. Get in contact, Howard Kane at manxradio.com, Caine, letter Kane, and let us know if you know more about Rex Eaton or where else he might have sung or whatever the case may be. We're always interested in these little stories. Everyone's got a story to tell, have they not? Well, yes, they have, is the short answer. They have. What did I promise you as well? Yes, a bit of Sam Wooding and his orchestra. There's another name you don't hear on a daily basis, do you? Sam Wooding and his orchestra. Bullfoot Stomp. Not a bad sound. Good, certainly a good old swinging stomp, bullfoot stomp from Sam Wooding and his orchestra. Again, I bet you probably can't say that much about Sam Wooding, a pianist, a arranger, a band leader, and performed both in the States and toured across Europe and other parts of the world as well. Born in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and between the early 20s, he was a member of Johnny Dunn's original Jazz Hounds. Great name. And then went on to lead several big bands, both in the States and abroad, and developed a floor show for the 1923 opening of the Nest Club. And 2 years later, while performing at Small's Paradise, a Russian-American impresario booked Wooding and his band as I don't think we can actually sort of be able to use this now. They were booked as the Chocolate Kiddies. It was a different time, that's all I'm going to say. And his review of performance for a European tour, and they performed with that name, Berlin, Hamburg, Stockholm, Copenhagen, and the cast included, amongst others, the singer Adelaide Hall. A very good band, albeit an appalling name, but as I say, different era. And he toured Russia in 1926. In the following year, he toured in Argentina, Brazil, and, well, all around the globe. It was amazing how far his reach was. Very popular indeed. And in 1929, with slightly different personnel, made a tour of Europe and recorded in Barcelona and in Paris for the Parlophone and Pathé labels. And then went on to feature at the Apollo Theatre in Harlem later in the 1930s, and carried on working with Adelaide Hall as well. Not bad for someone you probably never heard of, is it? Returned home back in the 1930s when World War II started, and did some formal studies then, after all those years of being a musician. Then decided, I'll get some qualifications. So he did some formal studies and got a degree of music. I mean, you've got to take your hat off to these people. All that career and all that touring before he decided, I'll get some qualifications. So then he got a music degree and started teaching full time. And among his students was a trumpeter who became fairly famous in the field of jazz, early bop, and died far too young. One Clifford Brown, a student of Sam Wooding. I love these interconnections.
Gang, it looks like we picked out the wrong spot this evening, don't it, huh? You know, this sweet music's all right, but we always been a bunch that go in for plenty of pep and excitement. I know where to go. Let's get our coats and hats and get out this joint, huh? Come on then, let's go from here, where we can have some fun, I mean. Shadows are creeping and stars go peeping to the rhythm of the band. Boy, downtown's uptown, shaking that African. It's a brand new movement, but boy, what an improvement. You know, the gang goes loco doing that African. Them corner tricks and red hot licks, and they'll mow you down. And if you want a treat to low down beat, boy, come on uptown. Better than a black bottom. It's really in there. We started up here, too. Oh, shaking an African. Let me tell you, boy, this is the biggest craze in New York City. And if you don't learn this dance, oh, what a pity, a pity.
Doing the Afrikaan, Don Redman and the boys. And to tell you what, if he wasn't actually performing a style of rap or hip-hop a good 50 or 60 years before it became a thing, then my name's not H. He was there. I mean, he was just doing it, wasn't he, really? I mean, amazing. Sounds so modern, and yet 1920s. He'd have been a character to see live. To be fair, he did it better. That's more or less it for another week, would you believe? I say another week, another 2 weeks. Next week is Jumping In with Brother Chris, the best in modern and contemporary jazz. Here we are, flip-flopping back and forth. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Look after yourselves. Be good. Cheerio.